were you all over, or were you? I know you can't say like specifically where, but did you specialize in a certain set of countries, or did you just send as needed? Were you sent
They
as
just
needed
send you as
where?
needed. I mean,
How much are you allowed to talk about on a general basis your 9 years or 8, whatever it was with CIA?
I mean, I don't know how to answer that question, but why don't
Meaning
we just
like,
go into it and
okay,
I'll navigate through.
all right. So just to give people some background who don't have it and aren't familiar with you, after you left the Navy SEALs in '06, how long was it before you went and joined the CIA, and how did that work? What did they bring you in to do?
They brought me. So when I left, I did a quick pump at the State Department. It was a horrible experience. Lasted about a week, maybe 2 weeks, and I said, "Get me a flight home. I'm fucking out of here." Went home, and I didn't know these were the two things at the time, but I was being recruited by a friend to go into to try out for CIA, and then I was being recruited also by another company to go to work for NSA, and which actually the NSA was paying more at the time, but I wound up going with what wound up being the agency because I had personal friends and people that I'd worked with prior to in the SEAL teams that were vouching for that program, and that was extremely important to me. Who am I going to be working with, and what backgrounds, what kind of knowledge do these guys have? I don't want to be working with, no offense, but with the level of work that I was anticipating we were going to be doing, I didn't want to be out there with a Bank of America security guard
Right,
or a local cop. I want to
right.
be with guys that have been around and seen some real shit overseas. Not that these guys don't see anything, but I like to be with my own. I know what we're capable of, and I know what they're capable of, and I feel more comfortable with my peers. So I chose that, and so what it wound up being at the beginning was it started out as protection for people like Bustamante, right? People that are going out, getting information, meeting with assets, all that kind of stuff. Then this was the program that I was on was it was a new program, and the agency did not realize the capabilities that we brought to the table at first. So the requirements were, I think you had to have at least 6 years special operations to get in the door. And so that specific portion within the agency was, I mean, there was a ton of experience there. And they didn't realize what all we were capable of. It was, these guys can do a lot more than protection. They can do surveillance. They can do, they can, we can pretty much do anything. I mean, it's a large, at this point, it's now a large special operations unit where you're drawn from Green Berets, Navy SEALs, SEAL Team 6, Delta, Green Berets, Air Force PJs, Marine Reconnaissance, Marine Raiders, which are special activities guys, and you combine all of that knowledge into one unit. That's what you get. And they started, so when you go out into the field and you have a good boss and they're like, "Oh man, I wish we had this capability." It's like, well, fuck, we can do that. What do you want to do? Well, we want to set up comms and be able to push out a surveillance position over here to watch this portion of the border. Yeah, no problem. Well, what do we need to do this. Okay, well, and so all these new capabilities started getting brought to the table, and then that started spreading, and it became a lot more than just basic protection.
Were you all over, or were you? I know you can't say like specifically where, but did you specialize in a certain set of countries, or did you just send as needed? Were you sent
They
as
just
needed
send you as
where?
needed. I mean, as needed all over the world, but at the time that I was in, the majority of us went to the Middle East because that's where everything was kicking off.
What did you learn in the CIA in your experience there in all these places, if anything? What did you learn about the world that you didn't already learn in your experience deploying as a Navy SEAL?
Well, when you're a SEAL, it's let's kick in doors, let's go after one guy, and you don't really see all the other pieces that happen. You don't see the intelligence piece much. You don't see how everything kind of comes together. You're just a small part. At the agency, you start to see how everything comes together. You see the intelligence come in, you see the analysts get the intelligence, you see the hits happen, you see how long some of these things take. When I was a SEAL, sometimes I would get really frustrated, like, why is this guy still alive? We could have killed this guy a long time ago. Well, maybe we didn't kill him a long time ago because we're still getting information out of him. And as much of a shithead as he is, he's leading you to bigger bad guys, worse bad guys, and you get them. And so basically, if you're lucky, in the agency, you get a guy that's in the middle of a network. You keep that guy, you pay that guy. Yeah, we know he's a dirtbag and a scumbag and the worst of the worst, but his friends, you get all of them. And then at the end, maybe there's some kind of deal made, or maybe he gets outed too, And so you get to see all of that stuff kind of come together from beginning to the end. Does that make any sense?
100%.
Okay.
That was a great explanation. All right, guys, I got a quick announcement that I've been waiting 3 months to tell you guys all about. Since March, I have been working with a fashion brand, and I'm going to say that very clearly. Not a merch house, a fashion brand, to develop some fashion for this show. We will eventually get our way to a bunch of regular merch as well. I know you guys have been so patient. Obviously, I'm a one-man show doing this thing, so I want to make sure when I do things, I do it right. But this is our first step in that direction. And essentially what we're going to be doing is in a few weeks' time, I'm going to give you the date soon and all the details soon, but in a few weeks' time, we're going to be doing an exclusive pop-up shop. I have been working with this company to develop all different types of designs to see what you guys like. We're going to put them all out there, let you guys figure out what you like the best. And with this first pop-up, it's going to be a limited drop over a limited time, and you're going to want to get your hands on it. So keep your eyes open for more details to come. Other than that, back to the show. But is there, because now you're working, as you just laid out, in like some more, well, let's call it what it is, like more spy work, more, less the kicking in the doors stuff. Do you see patterns of things more when you do that? And specifically what I mean is when you're a Navy SEAL, you have the mission, here's what we're doing, here's where we're going, here's where there's a problem, kick in the door, get it done. People got to die, they got to die. In the CIA, when you're playing this longer term and trying to get information to figure out what's going on in the world, maybe even in places you aren't aware of yet, did you start to notice that you could kind of see trends happening before they happen? And maybe to put a specific one on it, perhaps maybe in the early 2010s, you might have been able, with your work, be able to see that like something like ISIS was starting to form?
Yeah, I mean, it can be hard to say, when I knew it versus when everybody else is knowing, because that's kind of what you're getting at, right? You want to know how far in advance I knew things were happening compared to when it hits mainstream. When you're working in that kind of capacity, you're so busy and there's so many things going on that you don't have time to worry about mainstream media. You know what I mean? You're making mainstream media, but you don't. Every once in a while, you'll get, a message from mom or dad or girlfriend or wife or whatever, husband, and it's, oh, were you guys out here doing this? And it's like, yeah, but you don't really, you're just not thinking like that. You know what I mean? Not at my level, which was a very pretty low level. But I'm not, I wasn't a policymaker or director or anything even close to that at the agency. I was in a very small group of special operations guys that could do a lot of shit for the agency. And on top of that, like when I'm talking about, you can see how everything kind of comes together. That doesn't mean you're previous to that every single time. If you're lucky, you'll see how it comes together. But kind of what I'm getting at is, remember how at the beginning of this I was telling you everything inside of there is very compartmentalized and there's a need to know.
Yes.
That even if you're hunting ISIS down, right? That doesn't mean you have widespread vision of everything that ISIS is doing. You might be, let's just say you're a terrorist that we're after, right? And I told you my rotations on the way up here. Sometimes they were 120 days out, a couple weeks home. Sometimes it was 45 days out, 45 days home. And every time I go back out, there's a good chance I'm going to a new location. You know what I mean? So I may spend 45 days on a project that's been going on for 10 years and it's going to go on for another 5 years. But the only information that I'm previous to is during my 45 days on that project. Once I'm removed from that project and go to another project, I'll never hear about that again unless I get put back on that project. And that only happened a handful of times. And that's cool when you can leave a project and come back to it several years later and see how it's developed and see what all has happened since you've been gone. All the information that's come in. Who did we get? Who did we not get? Who's still out there? What are they doing now? How has the direction of the enemy changed? What's their new goals? You know, and it's very interesting to see how all this develops.
I can't remember if you said this at the very beginning of this when we were talking about your career there at the CIA, but when you would do these deployments, so to speak, how many guys on average would you personally be on that job with, or did it totally vary?
It varied all the time. You could be, I mean, I don't want to get into specific numbers, but it could be, it could be a lot. You know, especially if you're at somewhere like a capital, then there's going to be a lot, and there's going to be analysts, there's going to be case officers, there's going to be operators, there's going to be targeters. There's all these people. You know, all of the leadership is going to be there. When you get out to some of these remote places, there may be times where you're out there alone.
And what's as far as like the cadence goes, obviously there's a huge difference in that you're spying versus knocking in doors now, but was there a big adjustment to how communication in the field went doing this? Or was it very similar once you're out there? Minus, being all kitted up and everything, I would imagine it wasn't really like that in the CIA. But like when you're out, let's say you're out in a city and you're doing reconnaissance on certain people, was the I'm trying to think how to ask this right so that people understand what the fuck I'm saying. But like, was your communication with base / with the other people involved in your mission, maybe dispersed throughout the crowd or with you or whatever, was it a similar cadence to when you were working in the SEALs, or was it just a totally new adjustment you had to make?
Sometimes it was. I mean, there's some times where you are. It looks like a special operations unit where you have your kit on, you've got helmets, night vision, guns. I mean, you're talking to Apaches. There's been times where I was working for the agency and I couldn't get through a road, and so I'd call into Apaches and I'd say, "Hey, clear this fucking road out," you know? and they would spin up.
Rain.
Yeah, no, I don't mean like that. But what they would do is they would just fly low, show their belly, fly in an aggressive pattern, and you want to watch. These people know what's up, you know. So they see an Apache come down and just show their belly and raise up like that. Guess what?
That'll do it.
That'll clear the seas. You know what I mean? It's like watching. Nobody wants to get out of your way until the Apaches are on top, and then they're like, "Okay, I'll get out of the way," and then there's nobody on the road, you know. And that would be an overt operation, you know. And then there's times where you look like where you're wearing a sports jacket or a suit in the middle of a Arab country that's dirt poor, and you stick out like a sore thumb, but that may be your cover.
Thank you for watching the video, guys. If you haven't already subscribed, please smash that subscribe button and check out this clip's full podcast episode by clicking here or in the description below.